According to Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka, fake news is dangerous. It has killed so many times. The phenomenon has generated several concerns and the federal government has taken steps to check the trend. So how can this be checked? This week on Dateline Abuja, we look at fake news and national security. Hello there and welcome to the program. I am Terry Ikumi. Now, the nation is preparing for the 2019 general election, which is in a matter of weeks. The Federal Capital Territory is also preparing for the local government chairmanship and councillorship election. We bring you details of the preparation for this election, which take place every 2 years. But first, what are the stories that made headlines within the week in the nation's capital? After over 2 months of a halt in academic activities in government universities across the country, the federal government has finally reached an agreement with members of the Academic Staff Union of Universities. Addressing journalists after a meeting with the striking lecturers, the Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, says majority of the demands by the striking lecturers, including the release of 15.4 billion naira for payment of salary shortfalls, have been resolved.
The Ministry of Finance and the Office of the Accountant General had provided us with evidence that they remitted the sum of 15.389,940,335.71, which is 15,389,940,335 naira 71 kobo. This is to accommodate payment of shortfalls in all the tertiary institutions that have been PICA verified. They also showed us evidence that Mr. President has approved for the sum of 20 billion to be used to offset the outstanding arrears on the 2009 to 2012 audit verified earnings in the university system.
Over 84 million Nigerians are expected to vote in the 2019 general election. The Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) released the comprehensive list of voters for the election to political parties at an event in Abuja.
In fulfillment of this legal requirement, the Commission has made available to each political party a copy of the entire National Register of Voters. After the mandatory display of the register in all polling units nationwide for claims and objections from the 6th to the 12th of November 2018, the final register for the 2019 general elections stands at 84,004,084 voters. Similarly, the Commission has printed and delivered the permanent voters' cards to the states for collection by registered voters.
The federal government is set to launch a media campaign to drum up support for the troops fighting insurgency in northeast Nigeria. The Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, stated this at a news conference in Abuja.
We are not about to gag the press, and there's no clamp down, as some people seeking to feed on the issue have claimed. But the media must exercise restraint and show more responsibility in reporting the insurgency. That brings me to the bigger issue of overall support for the military. there have been very disturbing developments in recent times. The activities of a section of the media and some opposition political parties are demoralizing the military and strengthening the insurgents.
The Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, is calling on Nigerians to cooperate with the nation's security agencies in their efforts to reduce terrorism and insurgency in the country. He was speaking at the burial ceremony of 5 Air Force personnel who lost their lives in the January 2, 2019 helicopter crash in Damasak, Borno State.
The loss of these courageous and professional gentlemen must spur the rest of us not only to rededicate ourselves in the service of our nation, but we must also resolve to expose and fight all agents of destabilization and extremism in our society. We must throw in everything we have to this fight to ensure that our departed colleagues did not die in vain. All Nigerians need to know that this fight is a national struggle. It's not a fight by the military alone. It's a national struggle to free ourselves and protect those values we hold very dear to our hearts. The values of freedom, the right to life, and the right to pursuit of happiness. To bring the ongoing, we must therefore put all hands together to bring the ongoing insurgency in the Northeast to an end that is favorable to our nation.
The federal government has set a timeline of January 23rd to transmit the new national minimum wage to the National Assembly with a view to fast-tracking the implementation of a new wage structure for Nigerian workers. The Minister of Labour and Employment gave the assurance during a meeting with the leadership of the Nigeria Labour Congress and its allies.
We have a target time of January 23, 2009, and we hope that all things being equal, the executive will be able to do so. We will take on the statutory meetings of Federal Executive Council, National Economic Council, and the National Council of States to enable us to transmit the bill on the new national minimum wage. So I want to thank you for your cooperation and your understanding on behalf of the federal government of Nigeria, and we will then appeal to you that the threats should now come down.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has inaugurated an advisory technical committee made up of experienced economists and administrators to advise government on new sources of funds as well as ways to implement the proposed new minimum wage in a sustainable manner.
I want to make it clear that there is no question about whether the national minimum wage will be reviewed upwards. I am committed to a review of the minimum wage. Also, it is important to explain that even though the subject of a national minimum wage is in the exclusive legislative list, we have been meeting with the state governors because it is imperative that the federal government carries along the state governments in determining any upward review of the minimum wage for workers. This is essentially necessary considering the prevailing public sector revenue challenges, which have made it extremely difficult for some of the governments to pay workers as and when due. As you know, we at the federal level have made adequate provision for the increase in the minimum wage in our 2019 budget proposals, which is submitted to the National Assembly. Therefore, we will be able to meet the additional costs that will be incurred in moving up all personnel who are currently earning below the new minimum wage to the new minimum wage.
4 new private universities have been approved by the Federal Executive Council. The approval was made at the first council meeting in 2019, presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari.
They are Greenfield University at Kasarami in Kaduna State, Dominion University in Ibadan, Oyo State, Trinity University in Laloko in Ogun State, and Westland University in Iwo, Osun State.
The federal government has decided to use the 100 billion naira sovereign sukuk bonds proceeds to construct 642.69 kilometers of roads across Nigeria. The check for the money was presented by the Finance Minister, Haja Zainab Ahmed, to the Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola.
In line with federal government's commitment to the funding of infrastructure, the proceeds will be used to further support budgeted capital spending for 2018. The construction and rehabilitation of 28 key economic roads across the 6 geopolitical zones of our country. Each of the 6 political zones has an equal allocation of 16.67 billion naira. The roads will ease commuting. The roads will spur economic activities across our country and further close our infrastructure gap.
The Independent National Electoral Commission has outlined a 7-step voting procedure for next month's general elections. The procedure, which was posted on its website, are not substantially different from those used in the recently conducted isolated or off-season elections like the Ekiti and Osun state governorship elections, as well as some of the by-elections for some legislative seats across the country.